When that little tiny thought pops into your head, I wonder if I should reef, then it's time to reef. You get to a nice beam reach. A beam reach is nice and easy where the wind is coming directly. Lee helm's quite unusual, but it does happen. And very often, bringing the block forward, it changes the lead. And now again, we've got this left-hand picture where the sail's been oversheeted. Many modern boats, especially racing machines, have a hydraulic solid kicker, which has got a lot more power in it. Thank you for all coming for this little webinar on basic sail trim. And I just wanted to say, first of all, this is not about highbrow racing sailing. Please don't expect me to be an expert on sail trim. I am not a racing bod. I am a cruiser. I like to sit and have a sandwich and drink my tea. So this is what it says on the tin. This is basic sail trim. Why is it important? Well, we're all here, I guess. The reason we're doing our courses, the reason we are sailing is because we want to be on a sailing boat and harness the wind to take our boats up and down the channel or even off around the world. And that's the kind of thing that really excites me, sort of the fact that you can use the wind to propel seven tons of boat and all your stores any way you want to. And so I put here efficiency because if we are going to sail a boat, we might as well do it efficiently as non-efficiently. And of course, that goes with speed as well. I think, to be fair, by trimming our sails correctly, it is going to give us speed. And even if we're not racing, if we're just trying to get from A to B, then getting there as quickly as possible is what we aim to do, really. Wear and tear. Sailing boats are expensive things, and the main power propulsion is the sails. And if you kind of abuse your sails, they are going to wear out quickly, they are going to get damaged, and it's going to cost you money. So actually trimming your sails correctly is very important for that. Balance and heel. I always think our boats should be sailed comfortably if we can. And by correctly adjusting our sails, we can make the boat sail efficiently and be much more comfortable, not excessive heel, comfortable at sea. And that of course goes along with crew comfort. I don't want to give you too much theory about this, but I'm just going to come up with a couple of things I feel you should be aware of. And my first thing is my weather vane principle. I'm sure you're all familiar with weather vanes that are loitering about on tops of church spires. And the weathercock basically rotates with the wind to give us the wind direction. Now, for those who are savvy about this, you'll notice that the cardinal points are moving on my my weather vane, but that's the best graphics I could find, so I apologize for that. But basically, this is about balance, and this is what I want to talk about first, about getting your boat balanced. So if we take this weather vane effect and put this to a boat, I'm going to talk about a sloop. That's a standard sort of boat with two sails. We can take this idea across any type of sailing vessel, but this makes it nice and easy. So here we have a boat sailing along in perfect trim. And hopefully you can see that if we have a boat that's only got a mainsail up, or the mainsail is much larger than the headsail, then it's going to have this tendency to head up into the wind. And conversely, of course, if you have a boat with just a headsail up, or again, a large headsail and a small mainsail, then it's going to tend to bear away from the wind. And that's going to make steering the boat quite difficult. And so we're always trying to achieve this balance where the two sails are balanced backwards and forwards. This little picture really was just to show you that the sails, unlike the previous picture, they were flat. But of course, sails are not flat. They are curved. And that's what I want to talk about next. It's why the sails are curved. And hopefully this is the last technical diagram for you. This is an aerofoil shape. Many of you may recognize this. This is typically a shape of a wing on an aeroplane. It's also the shape of a sail on a boat. And if we think about this maybe as a wing on an aeroplane, the wing shape is such as this. As the aircraft is propelled forward, the air flows through the front of the wing and it splits. And because the curvature of the wing, some of the air flows over the top of the wing and some flows underneath it. And the air flow over the top has to travel further than underneath it. And so we get a pressure difference. We end up with high pressure on the underside, low pressure on the top side. And that's what makes the wing lift. This is what makes aircraft fly. It's basic physics, which I always find very encouraging. You know, even if the engine stopped, that the wing will cause the plane to keep flying. The power from this is at the kind of the widest point. It's usually about a third way back from the front of the wing, or when we come to sails, about a third way back from the mast. And this is where the lift comes from. This is the power. Now, clearly, this is okay on an aircraft wing, but the same is happening on a sailing boat. Our sail is shaped with this aerofoil shape that gives us lift. But of course, the whole thing is now cant from a wing like this way, so it's now vertical. So how does that work? So now let's look at our sailing boat and see how this all comes into play. I've shown you a boat here. The wind is shown in coming in, and this boat is on a close hauled course. The power about a third back from the mast is pushing the power from the sail is pushing us this way. And if we break this power down into two component parts, you'll see there's a sideways force and a forward force. The sideways force is bad because that's just trying to push the boat sideways. The forward force is good because that's what's driving a boat forward, which is what we want. The reason our boat doesn't go sideways to the water is because it has a keel. And for those of you who've got well into your day skipper or yacht master course, you'll know this is something we call a leeway. It's that sideways motion. The boat is being pushed sideways to the water, and the only thing stopping it is the keel of the boat. For those of you who are dinghy sailors, you will know that if you're close hauled and you pull your centerboard up, the boat will literally just go sideways. So it's a very important thing. So here, close hauled, we've got lots of bad sideways force and a little bit of forward drive. Now let's see what happens when we come off the wind. And so we've now come away. Wind is coming over the side. We're on a beam reach. There's the force, the power force on the sail. And now if we see the component parts here, you'll see it's a bit more equal. We've still got that bad sideways force, but it's less. So we've got more forward-way drive, which is good. So it's becoming a bit more efficient. And finally, in my third diagram, I'm broad reaching. So the wind has now come behind us. It's coming over the quarter. The sail's all the way out. Let's put the power in the same place. But now if we look at the two component parts of this, you'll see that there's very little sideways force. And most of the force we're producing is moving us forward. And that's great. And so you can see that this is why broad reaching is why it's the fastest, most efficient way of sailing, because almost all the force is actually pushing us forwards and not sideways. As opposed to when you're close hauled, then we've got a lot of sideways force. And those of you who sail a lot, you will know that when you're close hauled, the boat is heeled right over on its end because we're wasting most of that power. Okay, a couple of golden rules. I didn't invent these. I learned these from other people, but I think they're quite important. There's the first one. A flappy sail is an unhappy sail. If we have a sail, it's flapping, it's not doing anything useful. It's not powering the boat. It's being noisy. And again, this is where we're getting damage. Our sail is being chafed. It's being running back and forward. You'll get damage as that flaps back and forward. I've had, in certain conditions, battens fly out the back of the sail. Things get ripped. So having a sail that is flapping is bad news. And we should always be pulling our sails in enough to stop that flappy motion. And conversely, we've got this thing that says when in doubt, let it out. And this is really because we don't like flappy sails, and so we pull our sails in, and when the sail's pulled in, it's not flapping. But very often we'll find people will be sailing close haul, the sails in tight, and as they ease off the wind onto a beam reach or a broad reach, they don't let the sail out. Now the sail's not going to flap, but it's incredibly inefficient, and we're not going to be going very quickly. And so very often I find people just have the sails in tight all the time. And this is where you need to think very carefully about your point of sail and about easing the sail out when you're off the wind and pulling the sail back in when you come back onto the wind. And this is, I was out on my friend's boat a week ago. Balanced. You'll see she sails quite happily by herself in a straight line. Well-behaved boat. So this is my friend's boat. It's a lovely long keel boat. As you can see, when you get the sail trimmed perfectly, the two sails are balanced, then you can let go of the helm and she will sail herself in a straight line. So let's talk about basic sail positions now. And this is a diagram many of you will be familiar, certainly if you started dinghy sailing. It's the various points of sail. We start off with the winds coming in from the top of the screen, and I like to use the rule of thumb, and this no-go zone, I like to put my hands together like this. I point my thumbs at where the wind is, and this area here is my no-go zone. I cannot sail a boat in there. If I point my boat into the area, the sails will flap. So the closest I can sail is on the edges, this close haul position here. And you'll see when we're close hauled, the sails will be fully in, so they will be in tight and the boat will be leaning over. As we kind of come away from the wind, we bear away from the wind, and as we come off the wind onto a close reach, then we can start to ease the sails out. The boat will flatten out a little bit and we should power up. And we eventually get to a nice beam reach. A beam reach is nice and easy where the wind is coming directly over the side of the boat. And at this point here, again, we've eased the sails out and they should be about halfway out. As we come off the wind now onto a broad reach, now the mainsail or both sails are going to go all the way out pretty much. So we're catching maximum wind. And this, remember, is the fastest point of sail because all that power is pushing us forwards and not sideways. And then finally into the run where the sails are fully out and we are just being blown downwind like an old square rigger. And this is very basic sail trim, but I think it's certainly the first stage of this is really always think about what point of sail you are on and how should your sails be set. Close in for close hauled, halfway out for beam reaching, all the way up for a broad reach and a run. And if you do that, be pretty good sail trim. So let's look about some of the sail controls you've got on your sails. Here's our typical sloop, two-sailed boat. And we're looking at the mainsail first of all. And let's look at some of the component parts here. We've got the halyard there to pull the sail up. The outpull is there pulling the back of the sail back along the boom. We have the vang or the kicker. So that's pulling the boom down. Traveller, you can't see the picture. I'm going to better picture later on, but that allows you to move the main sheet across the boat from side to side, and the main sheet again for pulling the sail in and out. So what do these controls do? Well, firstly, the halyard, of course, is to pull the sail up the top of the mast. That's fairly obvious, hopefully, and it's tensioning the front of the sail. And there's a couple of things here. Firstly, if you have this too loose, you'll find you've got a sloppy sort of area of sail up the mast. You've got little sliders. You'll see little curves in it. You've got very inefficient sail shape. You're breaking up the airflow over the sail, and so you're not having got clean air traveling over the sail, which is inefficient. So you really want a nice tight luff up the front of the sail. Conversely, if you really crank it up tightly on your winch, then you kind of create a nasty little bag just at the luff at the front of the sail. Again, that causes sort of turbulence. So you're aiming to have a nice, smooth shape. And so when I put the main up, I put it on the winch, I tighten it up, and I kind of look up, I look along the sail to make sure it's a nice, smooth shape. The outhaul is at the back, is pulling the foot of the sail tightly along the bottom of the boom, and this is going to increase the shape or decrease the shape of the lower section of the sail. And we're going to talk a bit about that in a moment, whether we like lots of shape or whether we want flat sails. And the outhaul actually controls how much curvature we have in the bottom of the sail. Certainly when I used to dinghy sail, we just used to tie it off so it was completely unadjustable, and there are many cruising boats where the outhaul is just tied off. But if you're lucky enough, you might have it on an adjustable block so you can adjust the tension there in the foot of the sail. The kicker of the vang, I've always used the word kicking strap. The picture here, I would call this a kicking strap. So it's a couple of blocks with a rope through it, and that allows us to pull the boom down towards the base of the mast. A kicker is more of an American thing, but it's usually it's a rod kicker. So you'll see many modern boats, especially racing machines, have a hydraulic solid kicker, which has got a lot more power in it. But it's doing the same job. It's pulling the boom down. And this can change what's called a twist of the sail. This is quite a nice picture. You'll see that the twist is the leech of the sail. And if the kicker is loose, we've got a lot of shape here. And it means we potentially are spilling wind out the top of the sail. And by tightening up the kicker, we pull the sail much tighter, and that closes up and flattens this twist. And we can use that to power or depower the rig. This is a traveller. All, but not all. Some boats don't have travellers, so this is just two travellers. The main sheet is attached to the traveller, usually on the blocks, and you can see how this moves back. We can move it sideways, back and forwards across the deck. To be honest, does it make much difference? Well, on a cruising boat, not a lot. In fact, my traveller was fixed in the middle position for years until I got around to fixing it. I think racing people probably have better ideas of what we can use the traveller for, but from my point of view, it's a very good way of depowering the sail. So if you have the sail set and you're sailing in gusty conditions, rather than let the mainsail out, what we can just drop the traveller off and it will depower the sail as you drop it down one way. When you're close hauled in lighter conditions, ideally when we're close hauled, we want to be able to bring the mainsail tight into the middle of the boat. Now, if our main sheet is fixed in the middle, it will be always laying off at an angle. But in lighter conditions, you may be able to pull the traveller uphill a little bit and centralize the boom, which can be quite useful. And I added in because I'm a practical sailor, and sometimes I am motor sailing, so I'm motoring my boat with the mainsail up. And when you do that, often you get the sail is flapping about and flogging, which is not good. It's not good for the sail, and it's not good for your nerves. And sometimes the traveller is useful that you can actually pull it up on the track, oversheeting it, but it will stop that sail from banging about. And the main sheet, this is the main control, which basically is allowing us to pull the sail in or ease the sail out. Remember, close hauled, it's going to be in tight, and as we bear away from the wind, we will be easing the sail out until it's fully out. Just make a note, it's very important when you are off the wind, when you're perhaps broad reaching or running and the boom is all the way out, it is crucially important that your kicker, your vang, is on tight, because if that is loose, then the boom will be able to lift up. And there is a nasty thing called a Chinese jibe, where if your kicker comes off, the whole boom can lift up, jibe, and slam over the other side. So this is where your kicking strap or your vang is crucially important. Cunningham, more of a dinghy sailing thing. Basically, the Cunningham you can see here is a line at the front of the sail, and it allows you to tension the luff of the sail. That's the front of the sail. Now, on a cruising boat, you've got a flipping strong, powerful winch, and you can adjust the tension just by cranking up that winch, really increasing the halyard tension. But on a dinghy, you really haven't got the power there. So a smaller boat, often once the sail is up, you can control the power by having this Cunningham, which is attached to a block, and you can really tension up and detension and reduce the tension very quickly, therefore adjusting the sail shape and powering up and powering it down. Leech line, some of you will be familiar. It is a line that runs up the back of all sails, and allows you to adjust a loose leech. From my point of view, it's really about old sails. I always seem to have old sails in my boat, and as sails age, the back of the sail of each gets stretched and gets baggy, and when you're sailing, you'll find that's kind of fluttering backwards and forwards, and it becomes quite noisy and quite annoying. And the leech line just allows you to tension that up to stop that sail flapping. And I thought it probably isn't so useful with new sails, but certainly new sails always have leech lines built in for them so that you can control that slight fluttering of the back of the sail if it's required. So that's the mainsail. Let's now look at the headsail. A bit simpler, really. We have the halyard to hoist the sail up. We have the sheet lead, so the sheets run through blocks along the side decks on what are usually called cars. Back in the day, we used a piece of rope called a barber hauler to do this, and then we have the headsail sheets that usually run back onto some cleats and usually through winches, so we can adjust the tension on them. Not a great picture. I just wanted to show you, really, this is what happens when you have insufficient halyard tension. So when I started sailing, all sails were hanked on. So you can see these sails have got these little piston hanks, and you clip them onto the forestay and you'd pull a sail up. And this was classically what it looked like. If you had insufficient tension in the halyard, you'd have these little scallop shapes, and that showed you that sail was really very badly set. Of course, most modern boats, your headsail is on a furling system, so it isn't a solid track, so we don't get that same shape occurring. But I did make a little note here, and it's something I suffer on my boat. When you put your headsail up at the beginning of the season, be very careful about over tension. If you really crank it up tight, you'll find that your furling drum gets really stiff, and it's very hard to roll or unroll a sail. And if you have that problem, it's very often because the tension's just too much. And you can ease that off the winch and just ease the tension a little bit. It doesn't need to be so tight because it is held in that rough groove. So the sheets now come through cars on the deck, and most modern boats have got tracks that run both sides of the boat, and on the tracks are these blocks, and the sheets are run through these blocks, and it allows you to adjust the angle of the sheet relative to the sail. When I started sailing, we used a block and a rope barber hauler, where you could just physically move this piece of rope back and forward to adjust the car positions, and you'll see the difference that makes coming up here. So this is how it works. This is that's a headsail, and pretty much our main aim is to keep equal tension on the back of the sail and equal tension on the foot of the sail, and that's how the sheet lead runs down to the block here. Now, if you imagine rolling the sail away, so perhaps it's with the wind's increasing, we furl the sail away. If we leave the car in the same position, you'll find the bottom of the sail is very tight, and the top of the sail is, or the back of the sail, and each is very loose and sloppy. Now, you might want that to depower the rig sometimes, but you really don't want the back of the sail flopping very much. And so it's quite important to therefore adjust this car position. So by bringing the block forward, it changes the lead, and now again we've got equal tension on the bottom of the sail and the back of the sail. Conversely, if we now decide the wind's easing, we've got all the sail out, we now have a situation where the back of the sail is very tight and the bottom of the sail is very loose. Again, we want to kind of equalize that tension. So now you can see, once we pull more sail out, then actually moving block backwards pulls that lead, so it's equalizing the tension between the leech and the foot of the sail. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do with our headsail. As we are adjusting the headsail, we are adjusting that lead. Older boats may have a wardrobe of different sized headsails, hank-on headsails, and depending whether they're putting up the number 1 or the number 2 or the number 3, they will be adjusting that lead for each particular sail. Most of us probably have got furling headsails, And therefore, as we are rolling the sail in or rolling the sail out, we do need to think about adjusting this car position so that we keep equal tension on the leech and on the foot. Headsail controls, the headsail sheets. Really, that's just about obviously pulling the sail in and out, again, close hauled in tight when we're broad reaching fully out. I just wanted to make a little comment. When we are close hauled, do be very wary of this, that very often when you're close hauled, you pull that headsail in really nice and tight, but do try and keep it off the shrouds, because otherwise you're going to get chafe, you're going to damage the back of the sail, or indeed you're going to chafe the rope. So when I'm actually cranking my headsail in, I'm looking over the sides, and I always keep the sail and the line, the sheet, a couple of inches off the actual wire shroud, just to reduce. And that's the maximum I can pull it in, and that kind of gives me the maximum how close I can sail my boat to the wind. So let's look at some visual clues, things we can look at to help us set our sails. And I've got three here. One is using the mainsail luff, one is using telltales on the back of the main, and the other is telltales on the headsail. So this is the mainsail luff, and I use this quite a lot when I'm sailing. Remember this rule about when in doubt, let it out. Well, what we should be doing is, as we're sailing along, we've perhaps changed onto a new course, being a broad beam reach or a close reach. And as we set onto our course, then I like to ease the main out so it just starts to flap. And you'll see here, we're just sailing along. Our headsail's nicely set here. And you'll see that the luff, the front of the sail, is just flapping a little bit. And I like to ease the sail out, the mainsail, so it just likes to flap. And then I just pull it in so it stops flapping. And that's the optimum position. Now, because I'm a lazy cruiser, I kind of do that and sit down and have my cup of tea. But if there's any racers out there, then you will have a mainsail trimmer and a headsail trimmer. And they are constantly easing the sail out, looking for that tiny, tiny flutter, and then pulling that sail back in again. And it's getting that optimum sail position continuously. Telltales on the back of the mainsail. You'll see these little bits of usually spinnaker tape. Very often they are on where the sail battens go in. And again, they're indicating the flow, the laminar airflow, the airflow flowing over the sail. You can see in this left-hand picture where the sail's been oversheeted. They're just kind of dropping limply because there's turbulence coming off of the back of the sail. But by easing the mainsail out, you can see how these telltales start to fly out straight. And they're a very easy way of setting your main. So you can be looking at the luff, but also if you've got these little telltales at the back, then you can just keep an eye on those and let the sail out till you see them all flying nicely. Back when I started, we used to use cassette tape because it's very light, but little bits of wool or twine or spinnaker tape or spinnaker material is quite good to do that. On the headsail, we have telltales, and the telltales you can see are just up here. On both sides of the sail, and the optimum position is where they are flying equally. Now I've got this little short video clip. You'll see where we're sailing along and we're coming up into the wind a bit, and then we're bearing away, and you're going to see how these change. The audio is not great, but I'm sure you'll get the idea with this. Telltales flying close. Okay, Chris, if you just head up a bit, we're just coming a bit up into the wind. See how the inner telltales are lifting. Okay, if we bear away back on course. You can see as we bear away, the telltales start to fly again. Drop off 10 degrees the other way. Now we're just bearing away a bit. You can see how the outer ones now starting to fly. And we'll come back on course, Chris. That's how I tell self. Cool. So these are really very handy, the telltales on the headsail. Many boats are fitted with them, and you'll often see the helm will be sitting on the leeward side, the low side of the boat, looking under the mainsail, looking up at the headsail and looking at these telltales. And they're trying to get them so they're flying equally. And if we come a bit too close to the wind, the inner one will fly up, start lifting, and so we know we have to bear away. Or if we're off the wind, we have to sheet the sail in. So they're great indicators of whether you're sailing optimally. So that's some visual clues. Now, what about things you can feel? I've got 3 here: weather helm, lee helm, and pinching. Weather helm, basically when the boat starts to feel heavy. So if you're steering the boat and she's really getting hard work, she wants to keep heading up into the wind and you're fighting to have to bring her back again, this is weather helm. Now, all boats have a little bit of weather helm. It's a safety feature, thinking about that balance thing. And the idea is that if anything happens and you let go of the wheel, let go of the tiller, the boat would just gently bring herself up into the wind, the sails will flap and she'd stop. So all boats have got natural weather helm. But in strong winds, if your mainsail is too big, she'll really be fighting you. And I notice a lot of the modern fin keelers, if you get hit by a gust, they will just screw up in the wind. You've got no control over the boat whatsoever. So if you find that it's starting to get hard work, then it's telling you that you need to ease the sail off. Now, initially, we can let the sheet out or we can drop the mainsail down the track on the traveller. But if it's kind of still quite hard work, this is an indication that you need to actually put a reef in. Now, lee helm's quite unusual, but it does happen. And very often you'll be sailing and suddenly the boat becomes very light, uncomfortably light, and the boat starts to head off downwind, which is actually potentially quite dangerous because there's a chance of you jibing. And it's usually because the headsail is just a bit too big. And so if you find that you've got lee helm, then what you want to do is either reduce the size of the headsail, or maybe you might want to increase the relative size of the mainsail because we're trying to bring that balance back in again. But lee helm is rare, but it's not a very nice thing when it happens to you. Now, pinching is pretty much a bit like weather helm. The boat is continuously coming up to windward and the sail is just luffing there. And you might be slightly amused here. My first thing for correcting is the fresh helms person. And it's because very often the boat naturally has this tendency to want to pull up into the wind. And you really have to concentrate just to keep a bit of helm on to keep the boat in a straight line. And as you get tired, you start to find the boat just keeps coming up as you lose attention. And you'll be on the boat and there'll be somebody going, you're pinching, you're pinching, you're pinching. And you just have to continuously be aware of just bringing the boat round. So if you've got a person on the helm, they're getting tired, maybe a fresh helms person could deal with that. But again, if it's because we've got too much sail, we need to flatten the sail down a bit, ease it off again, or again, perhaps put the reef in because we're struggling to keep her on a straight course. Very basic rules, but probably these are 2 of the most very important rules that you should be aware of. In light winds, we want power to drive the boat through the water. So we want lots of shape. If you think about that aerofoil shape I talked about at the beginning, we want lots of shape. Lots of shape gives us power. And this is where in light winds, we'll be perhaps reducing the tension in the halyard. We'll be letting the kicker and the outhaul off just to allow that sail to blow out and have shape to it. But conversely, if we now out in strong winds, there's a chance we're going to be completely overpowered. And this is where we want to really flatten stuff down. So even before we start thinking about reefing, start about really flattening the sails, really take up the halyard tension on the main, really haul in the outhaul, put on lots and lots of kicker to really bring that boom down and reduce the twist. And all those things are going to actually reduce the power in the sail. So 2 golden rules there: light winds, lots of shape; strong winds, flatten your sails down. Okay, a couple more of my golden rules. Again, I was taught these as a lad. when to reef, and this I've stuck to these rules religiously throughout my sailing career. When that little tiny thought pops into your head, I wonder if I should reef, then it's time to reef. Always reef early. Don't put it off and put it off and put it off, and suddenly the wind's increasing and you go, I don't really want to put a reef, and it's going to be, I don't want to go on the deck because it's going to be dangerous, but then it's too late and conditions are getting really bad. So as soon as you have that little thought, should I have a reef in, put it in. Because of course, if the wind drops away, you can always take it out again. And the second rule, of course, when the idea pops into your head, I wonder if I should take the reef out, then always have a cup of tea first. Don't rush into it, because the wind might just drop away just for 5 or 10 minutes and then it'll be back up again. So if you're thinking about, yes, perhaps I should get some more sail out, give yourself 10, 15 minutes, have that cup of tea, think about it, and then see, is it really decreasing? Again, these 2 rules have stuck with me my entire life. When it comes to reefing, it kind of goes against the grain, I think, a bit for many people. A lot of people, as the wind increases, there's a natural tendency for them to roll away the headsail because it's easy. You just pull a furling line, reduce it. But just think about this balance thing. And most boats, as I've said already, have a natural weather helm anyway. And so as the wind increases, she's going to want to turn up more into the wind. And so really, if the wind starts to increase, the first thing you should do is stick a reef into your mainsail. Maintain that balance. And as the wind increases after that, then you'll roll some headsail away. And if the wind increases, you might take in a second reef. It's about keeping these sails balanced at all times. And perhaps this is a good point to say, it's not just about you steering your boat and trying to keep the boat balanced, but if your boat has got automatic steering system, if you've got an autopilot working or a wind steering system, then they will be working overtime if your boat is not balanced. So it's helpful, keep it nice and even, and then you'll find that your autopilot will be much better off. I just wanted to mention about sailing motor. Some people think, well, why, if there's no wind, why should I actually put my sails up? And there's a few things I think. Firstly, stability. So a sailing boat that hasn't got any sails up actually can lurch around quite a lot. They are designed to have canvas up. And so, yeah, I see boats out there in a bit of a swell without sails up and then bashing backwards and forwards. So I will always put my mainsail up because it will give me stability. Visibility is another thing, especially if there's a bit of a swell going on. Then if you've got your sail up, your mainsail up, then people are going to see you much easier. And certainly at night time, a classic thing would be that if you thought a vessel hadn't seen you, you would shine your torch onto your mainsail, and it's like a huge bright headlight saying, I'm here. So I always put my sail up for visibility as well. I like to also have the sail, my sail ready to go, or the sail ready to go. So by having the sail up as soon as I leave, it means if the wind does pick up eventually, it's up and I can start sailing pretty easily. And from my point of view, also as a backup, because after all, we are a sailing boat, we have an auxiliary engine. But if that engine fails, if even a car and the engine fails, you just come to a grinding halt. But if you're, say, on a boat that the engine stops, we could find ourselves in all sorts of difficult positions, especially if you're in a narrow channel. And by having a sail up ready, if the engine fails, you're ready to sail out of some difficulty if you need to. Also, I put here speed, and people sometimes don't estimate that very often that you can be sailing perhaps slowly at maybe just 2 or 3 knots, and you can just put the engine on in just tick over, and the combination of the engine driving the boat suddenly brings up to 5 or 6 knots. It's quite dramatic that just the engine in a slow tick over speed in conjunction with the sails will drive the boat quite efficiently. Certainly, I always, as soon as I come off the mooring, I will always put my mainsail up for all those reasons. At the bottom of my little list here, I have got these two because I've met plenty of people who kind of don't do this. Obviously, there is this UV exposure. So if you are out and the conditions are calm, then people don't like to put the mainsail up because it's exposed to the sunshine. That's where a lot of the damage is done. And also, of course, it might be flogging backwards and forwards, especially if you are motoring into a light wind. So that is the reason that you might choose not to put sails up. But for me, I will always have my mainsail up, whatever. Last thing I just thought was worth a mention. It's not specific about sail trim, but this, I think, if none of you have ever had a go at hoving to, this is really a very useful skill that you should learn. Why do we do it? This thing, it's called the hove to position or heaving to, and it allows us to stop the boat pretty much in control. And traditionally, people would hove to for a break. So if you were crossing the Atlantic Ocean and you were caught out in bad weather and you needed a break, you're all tired, you could hove the boat to and get some rest. And I've actually been hove to for 24 hours in the Atlantic in some stormy conditions. And the hove to position, the boat actually settles out into a very comfortable motion and is moving very, very slowly. And you'll see this picture here. The hove to position where the sail is back, the headsail is backed here, and the helm is trying to drive the boat up into the wind. But it's the headsail that's pushing the bow off, and the rudder that's trying to push the boat up. You reach this kind of balanced area where the boat is just drifting very slowly, very sideways in a very controlled manner. And people may hove to for many often reasons, just to have a rest. Some people stop to have a cup of tea or have some lunch. If you're sat single-handed, you might hove to so you can go down and put the kettle on or have a wee. You know, you might just do it for a few seconds. You could do it for an hour. But it's an extremely useful skill to be able to do. It's very, very easy to do. How do we hove to? Well, simply we're sailing along and we would decide to hove to, and we tack the boat, but we don't adjust the headsail. So we don't bring the headsail across as we would on normal tack. And you'll see how the headsail gets backed onto the wrong side of the boat. And then we just push the tiller over to one side here. And the headsail's trying to blow us off the wind. The rudder is trying to push us up into the wind. You can lash the helm, the wheel, or the tiller over, and you can let go of everything, and the boat sets really nice and stable and easily. And then you can get on and put the kettle on and just get some rest. And another very good feature about this is that you'll find that if you let the mainsail out in this hove to position, this mainsail will flap, which means it's a perfect position if you want to put a reef in. So again, if you are light-handed or even single-handed, the wind's increasing and you want to put a reef in, then the safest way is hove to the boat, let the main out, then you can go up, pull the sail down, put the reef in, and then carry on. For all of you, when you go and do the practical at day skipper or yachtmaster level, definitely practice heaving to. It's a very, very useful maneuver. Right, so that's my thoughts on basic sail trim. As I say, it is basic, but for a cruising person, I think that's as much as you really need to know. If you really want to know about sail trim, then this is where the racers come in. And if you are into racing yachts, then you will end up with really excellent sail trim. And certainly from my experience of teaching day skipper courses and yachtmaster preps, is when people come along who are racers or indeed are dinghy sailors, I find that their wind awareness and sail trim is far better than other people. So if you want to really get into sail trim, then start racing.
Okay, Charlie, when the house bears about 270 degrees.
Information to work out our distance from the lighthouse and use that.
We might be perfectly on track, but if we're not on time...
Have a look, I've got my phone here at the effects it has on our steering compass. So our echo sound is working, we can find a contour and follow it nicely into port.
Our left hand is pointing towards the centre of the lull.